NMH at 1 brings you the latest news, both local and international, ranging from current affairs, community stories, sports and economic news.
Here are the news headlines. Meatco's future hangs in the balance. Shinunga Junior Primary School in Kavango East Mashare Constituency is in dire need of assistance. South Africa considers declaring power crisis a national disaster. I am Glenn Rashipura, joined by Aina Raisakoya. In our midday news update, a South African judge presiding over the corruption trial of former President Jacob Zuma has withdrawn from the case in a move likely to cause further delays. Judge Meatco said he wanted to avoid any risk of compromising the perception of justice after he earlier ruled against Zuma's efforts to force out the prosecutor. Zuma is facing 16 counts of fraud and racketeering over the purchase of fighter jets and other arms equipment when he was vice president in the 1990s. 18 months ago, Zuma was given a 15-month jail term for contempt of court in connection with another corruption case. He has denied any wrongdoing.
Remember to engage with these stories on our social media throughout the broadcast. Visual news coming up after the break.
AgriMonitor is jou weeklikse landboukundige program wat jou die jongste nuus in die landbouverwante bedryf en onderwerpe wat daaraan gekoppel is bring. Vir enige advertensie of nuusverwante navrae, kontak agrimonitor@synergy.com.na.
Let's get into our visual news. The Minister of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform, Carl Schneidwein, yesterday addressed staff and stakeholders in his annual address. Eileen Smith contributed this video. Let's have a look.
We are therefore very thankful that necessary flexibility was in the program, that we could make sure that the pivotal status of, or this pivotal need in this whole cooperation, and that is to maintain the health status, is maintained. Madam Ambassador, you know we have in the northern areas of our country 2 communicable diseases that are still prevalent. It's foot and mouth, you have mentioned it, but it's now also lung disease. So we need to not lose focus on the veterinary services that we have to deliver to these farmers, so that their production, beef or whatever meat from bovine animals, is actually fit for purpose and can be marketed. Honourable Ambassador, you know that it is not only that, we are also receiving assistance in getting our abattoirs in a status that they can be registered for export to Europe. We get assistance in building meat processing facilities that helps us in implementing what we call the commodity-based trade value chain, which then would enable us to trade with beef out of areas which are not disease-free, but where the diseases are very well controlled and where the slaughtering and breeding process is done according to very strict rules.
Is in dire need of assistance. The school offers grade 1 to 3, where the majority of learners are from the marginalized community. Stephanus Shintago, the only teacher at the school, narrated the challenges the school is faced with, ranging from lack of proper structure, lack of teaching and learning material, as well as that learners are in need of school uniforms. Let's take a look.
Murongo nantantatu. Murongo nantantatu. Towe numkandere po? Wawa. Wawa. Wawa.
Mr. Shitango, just tell us some of the challenges school is faced with.
Actually, we are facing a lot of challenges here. As you can see, we are attending here school here. The class is with thatched wire, with thatched roof, and then the mice are coming in. They are destroying the books, and when the rain is raining, it disturbs the lesson. And some of the learners are coming from, most of them, let me say all of them are from the poor family. They are not having school uniform, so there are more to mention. I think that's few that I can say.
Okay, thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you. Barontambiri na etufake po vitatu ingafutura kwana. Barontambiri tuwe po vitatu, Barontambiri na tatu.
The future of Meatco affairs at the city of Windhoek and brand new phones for National Assembly members are all stories highlighted in the local daily newspapers. We will take a look at these after the break in the newspaper review segment. Stay with us.
In Business 7, you get news on current economic, financial, and business matters in Namibia. The weekly show features interviews with experts and in-depth analysis of burning issues in a way that caters for ordinary Namibians and business connoisseurs alike. For news-related or advertising queries, please contact B7 at synergy.com.na.
Getting into the newspaper review, on the front page of the Namibian Sun, the paper reports on Cassius Mwalala, who is suspected of having snitched on his cousins Tommy Nishindo, Simbula Munyeme and Erens Wanyamina Nishindo, the slain Namibian fisherman who died in November 2021 at the hands of Botswana Defence Force soldiers who accused them of poaching. Mwala, who reported the shooting incident with the Namibian police at Impalila Island the next day, said his life has become a nightmare since that fateful morning, and he often wonders if he made a mistake to report the shootings. On the paper's page 4, the Windhoek City Council's decision-making ability and activities have become severely constrained after a second attempt to assemble the important management committee failed again last week. Now, according to the city's legal representative, Ngatautre Kandovado, the fact that only 3 councillors were elected to the committee means that it is not sufficiently constituted and therefore will not be able to make valid decisions.
According to Afrikaans daily newspaper Republican, yesterday, the National Assembly's Information System Department issued a statement aimed at responding to a newspaper which reported that the government gave members of parliament iPhones and other mobile phones. According to the statement, the provision of mobile phones for members of parliament is part of an initiative to bring operation online. With support from the World Bank Namibia, the National Assembly is trying to establish a concept for an e-parliament using modern and reliable technology. On page 4, the Judicial Service Commission announced last week that President Hage Geingob has appointed two new High Court judges, in addition to the appointment of acting judges David Muntzu and Duar Keslau. The judges of the High Court, Philander Christian, was appointed as acting judge. Moreover, High Court Judge George Coleman's retirement has been postponed by 1 year following a decision to extend his retirement age to 66.
The Algemene Zeitung today leads with an article about the mobile telecommunications company MTC, which experienced a nationwide connection cut off yesterday. According to the paper, numerous people rushed to branches yesterday, where they were told only that the problem was a nationwide one, as they requested for explanations. On its page 3, the Allgemeine Zeitung elaborates that the Meatco slaughterhouse is accused of paying farmers in communal areas far less, while paying well-connected commercial farmers and ranchers higher prices for their tariffs. The Farmers Union accused the parastatal company of using subsidies for other purposes. The unions talk about the money concealing inefficient management.
We'll be right back shortly with newspaper review.
Take a load off and tune into another episode of Brave Namibia as we take a look at both ordinary and extraordinary Namibians. Brave Namibia is broadcasted on NTV Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. and 1up2.com, as well as broadcasted on the following Facebook platforms on Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Republican, Allgemeine Zeitung, Namibian Sun, and all Namibia Media Holdings pages. For more information, contact the Brave team at brave@synergy.com.na. Brave Namibia, for the ordinary and extraordinary Namibians.
According to the Namibian newspapers, lawyers representing the 6 Fish Road accused yesterday argued in the Windhoek High Court that Prosecutor General Martha Imwala's court application for property restraint order over the assets of men charged in the Fish Road Fishing Quotas fraud and corruption case was flawed from the start. Imwala's application in November 2020 was based on evidence collected during an investigation by the Anti-Corruption Commission, while the Prevention of Organized Crime Act says such investigation should be carried out by a police officer directed in writing by the Inspector General of the Namibian Police. On page 3, the paper reports that Namibia economic freedom fighter activist Michael Amushalelo said the protesters would target the main ShopRite store in Independence Avenue in Windhoek next. He made these comments shortly after his release on $3,000 Namibian bail in Walvis Bay Magistrate Court yesterday. Amushalelo was arrested on Friday last week and will again appear in court on the 13th of March.
According to the New Era, the family of 2 children who were allegedly killed by their mother, a Namibian national, over 2 years ago in Ethiopia, is asking why the accused is still free. They are also urged that the woman who is divorced from the deceased children's father is now also fighting for half of the value of her ex-husband's immovable properties. Christofina Amutenya was arrested in Ethiopia in December 2020 after becoming accused of murdering her 2 minor children, Jene and Jane, by strangling them. Amutenya, the ex-wife of a Namibian diplomat in Ethiopia, Petrus Haufiku, is also accused of attempting to murder her stepson, who survived the ordeal in Addis Ababa. She has resumed work in June last year. President Hage Geingob, as reported by New Era, says Namibia will continue to support Cuba because of the Caribbean island nation's invaluable support to Namibia during its liberation struggle. President Geingob shared this sentiment yesterday during the farewell courtesy call by Cuba's outgoing ambassador to Namibia, Sidenio Acosta Ade. In a separate report, 5 men implicated in the Fish Road scandal are fighting tooth and nail to stop Prosecutor General Martha Imwala from attaching their assets.
According to Market Watch, the market is bracing itself for new shocks due to introduction of the European Union's embargo on Russian oil. The Ministry of Mines and Energy said Wind24 recently reported that from February the 5th, the European Union, the G7 and its allies will attempt to impose a cap on the price of Russia's oil exports, the latest punishment for its invasion of Ukraine. That will coincide with the EU prohibition of almost all imports from the Russian product oil.
Now, Agriculture Minister Karl Schleitwan says Meatco is still in the intensive care unit and a decision must be taken on whether to terminate or to give it life support. The story coming up in economic news right after the break.
Now, in economic news today, Agriculture Minister Karl Schleitwan says Meatco is still in the intensive care unit and a modern decision must be taken on whether to terminate life support or breathe new life into its structure. He made these remarks during his annual staff and stakeholder address held in Windhoek yesterday in the commercial sector. What we see is that Meatco, as the biggest abattoir, has a certain extent failed the farmers, and they have now taken it into their own hands and are developing their own abattoir. He said there comes a time when a decision should be made over the future of the company, and it is a hard decision whether those resources that are putting into the limping organization are well spent or whether they should not use part of it to support farmers. Regarding the abattoirs in the north, Schleitwan said, with the expectation of Katima Mulilo's abattoir, nothing is happening. Nothing is happening. Farmers were forced to do it all by themselves, slaughtering underage trees, selling pieces by piece, and that is not what an efficient support system is. Half of our cattle sits without a market. He added that they have developed commodity based on trade, and it is working well. The Katima Mulilo abattoir supplies the North, Windhoek and Ghana with meat, but all the other abattoirs are mutuaries, not even in ICU.
Let's take a look at our economic indicators. The Namibian dollar retains its value against these major currencies, while one British pound will now cost 0.1% more in local currency. MTC, FESRAN Namibia and Capricorn Investment Group stock prices have increased by a small margin on the NSX. Local index has closed 0.02% lower, while an increase of 0.22% was observed in the overall index. Zinc is up in price, while other commodity prices have dropped.
South Africa is considering declaring the power crisis in the country a national disaster. This story and more news from the African continent after the break.
Iranga Talk brings you community news in the Oranga region. For news-related or advertising queries, contact irangatalk@synergy.com.na. Iranga Talk, our community, your news.
Let's get into our news from the continent. South Africa is considering declaring the power crisis in the country a national disaster. President Cyril Ramaphosa on Monday said the governing ANC party had recommended that a national state of disaster be declared to ensure sufficient resources were allocated to alleviate the problem. This will be similar to the state of disaster declared in 2020 to manage the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, he said in his closing remarks at an ANC strategy meeting. Work is already underway within government to establish whether the legal requirements of a national state of disaster are met and what specific actions we would be empowered to undertake, he said. Now, a national state of disaster will enable us to have the instruments necessary to fully implement the challenges that our nation faces, he added. Now, South Africa has been grappling with an energy crisis for years and is currently experiencing lengthy power cuts blamed on aging infrastructure and corruption.
The U.S. has warned African countries which work with the controversial Wagner Group in Russia's war on Ukraine do not end up in a stronger position. Last week, it sanctioned people and entities linked to the Russian paramilitary outfit for their role in recruiting prisoners, some of them African, to fight in Ukraine. In response, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner Group, provoked the U.S. Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen with a letter proposing to open a branch in the U.S. While the letter seemed somewhat of a troll by Prigozhin, the U.S. is serious about sanctioning what it called our goal to degrade Moscow's capacity to wage war against Ukraine. So far, a Zambian student jailed in Russia, Lemekani Nyireda, died in the battle in September. Russia's officials only informed Zambian authorities in November a Tanzanian student, Memes Tarimo, was buried over the weekend in Dar es Salaam. Mourners were told of how the Wagner Group recruited him from prison with the promise of payment and commuting his 7 years term. He was jailed of an undisclosed offense. Many African countries have not directly condemned Russia for recruiting their nationals to fight in Ukraine. Only Tanzania has officially warned its national from fighting foreign wars. Russia's Foreign Affairs Ministry Sergei Lavrov visited several African nations, including South Africa, Angola, and Eritrea, as he sought to firm up support as his country's war in Ukraine continues. Speaking at the White House briefing on Friday, Vendad Patel, the U.S. State Department principal deputy spokesperson, said African countries working with the Wagner Group were compromising regional peace and security.
After the break, we'll take a look at your international news.
The Evening Review is a daily interview-based talk show that dissects and expounds on current affairs as they occur in Namibia. The show aims at reaching Namibians of all age groups who seek better understanding of the state of current affairs in the country. This show is broadcasted on NTV, 1up2.com, and cross-shared on the following Facebook platforms: Namibian Sun and Namibia Media Holdings. The Evening Review focuses on interviews, latest news, and up-to-the-minute current events. Contact Evening at synergy.com.na. Evening Review, unpacking today's pertinent issues.
Let's get into our international news. Canada's province of British Columbia is starting a first-in-the-nation trial decriminalizing small amounts of hard drugs such as cocaine and heroin. From Tuesday, adults can possess up to 2.5 grams of such drugs, as well as methamphetamine and fentanyl and morphine. Canada's federal government granted the request by the West Coast province to try out the 3-year experiment. It follows a similar policy in the nearby U.S. state of Oregon, which decriminalized hard drugs in 2020. Ahead of the pilot's launch, British Columbia and federal officials outlined the rules under the federally approved exemption from the Controlled Drugs and Substance Act. While those substances will remain illegal, adults found in possession of a combined total of less than 2.5 grams of drugs will not be arrested, charged, or have their substances seized. Instead, they will be offered information on available health and social services. Federal Minister of Mental Health and Addictions Caroline Bennett on Monday called the move a monumental shift in drug policy that favors fostering, trusting, and supporting relationships in health and social services over further criminalization. Some 10,000 residents have died from drug overdoses since British Columbia declared drugs to be a public health emergency in 2016, officials said.
We'll be back with local sports after the break. It becomes clear that American Kishona Davis has no interest in taking the slow and meticulous route on his way up the pugilistic ladder. Instead, the 23-year-old from Norfolk, Virginia, has continued to point a daring finger in the face of the lightweight division's elite, in the case Namibia's Jeremiah Nakatila.
Now, coach Paulus Shipanga on Sunday parted with his coastal outfit 11 Arrows following their 2-0 defeat to Junior Sporting. Now, Shipanga said he resigned after the match because of poor results due to lack of support from management.
The Namibian Kickboxing Federation abrupt departure from the International Mixed Martial Arts Federation has raised more questions than answers. In a brief statement, Anita de Klerk, the president of the Namibia Kickboxing Federation, she said the federation is concerned about misleading information that has been released to the public.
We'll take a look at our international news. Britain's four-time Olympic champion Mo Farah said today that he expects 2023 to be the final year of his career, after confirming he will give his home London Marathon one more shot in April. Farah, who withdrew from last year's event due to injury, has run the London Marathon 3 times with the best finish of 3rd in 2018, the same year he won the Chicago Marathon.
New Wallabies coach Eddie Jones has declared that he is not the Messiah, but he is aiming to win this year's World Cup in France. The polarizing veteran has been lured back to coach the national side after Dave Rennie's shock axing earlier this month.
Now, FIFA President Gianni Infantino announced on the sidelines of the World Cup in Qatar in December that an expanded Club World Cup is planned from 2025. The bigger competition, which would feature 32 teams, has been a controversial pet project of Infantino's for some time. A 24-team Club World Cup involving 8 European sides had been due to take place in China in 2021, only to be put on hold due to the coronavirus pandemic.
If you're just joining us, this is NMH at 1. We will get into the highlights shortly after the break. Shortly after the break. Stay with us.
The My.NA Cars Show provides viewers with the best in-class cars content, engaging interviews, as well as a showcase of the latest cars-related news, products, and services. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact My.NA at synergy.com.na. My.NA Cars, more than just a ride.
Let's get into the highlights for today. South Africa is considering declaring the power crisis in the country a national disaster. Canada's province of British Columbia is starting a first-in-the-nation trial decriminalizing small amounts of hard drugs such as cocaine and heroin. Coach Paulus Shipanga on Sunday parted ways with coastal outfit 11 Arrows following their 2-0 defeat to Junior Sporting.
Those have been your highlights. Remember to tune in every weekday at 1 p.m. to spend your lunch hour with NMH at 1, catching up on the latest news in Namibia, Africa, and the world, ranging from current affairs, economic news, sports, and international headlines. I am Glenn Rashipura.